Hey guys, welcome to the Forge. I wanted to do this first ever video for Find and Fire Forge on the tools and equipment to get started in blacksmithing. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what the Forge is and what this channel is about. Channel is mainly about getting started in blacksmithing, basic blacksmithing. Then as we do all those videos, we'll go into intermediate and then more advanced stuff. But I really wanted to have a channel that really went into depth on teaching you how to really get started blacksmithing and really get the fundamentals down. But also I want to do it with us on a budget. So I wanted it to be very cost effective and get you started very fast. So I want to talk about first your equipment that you're going to need, and I'll talk about budgeted items as we go through this, and some tools also that not necessarily you have to have, but it makes it a lot more fun and makes making projects a lot easier and you're not having to fight with as much stuff. So first and foremost, I want to talk about safety gear. Safety equipment is very simple. Wear natural materials, 100% cotton, kind of like my hoodie, my pants, closed-toed shoes or boots. Be careful with synthetics, like the jogging pants, like polyesters, things like that. They melt really easy. And especially if you're using like a charcoal forge, sparks, they'll make stuff, if sparks real bad, it'll make stuff stick, it'll make your material stick to you. But you know, just basic, just 100% cotton clothing you can pick up at any thrift store or anything like that, blue jeans, any of that is really, really good to wear. If you have a hoodie on, and I just noticed this a minute ago, tuck these tassels in your jacket. One is while you're, like especially with the forge that I have, or if you bend over, you don't want that to catch on fire. That would ruin your day. Next thing, and it's most important, probably the most important item you could ever have, is a pair of safety glasses. This is a $2 pair. I have multiples for classes and stuff for people to use, but just a cheap, good pair of safety glasses. I think, like I said, $2 to $3, very, very cheap. Will save your eyesight. There are no minor burns in blacksmithing, and if you get something in your eye, it hurts really bad. A good pair of gloves. Again, I do recommend leather. These are brand new. I had to buy a new pair. I've worn my old ones out. I generally just wear one glove. I'm left-handed, so I always wear the right glove because that's the one that holds my material. But get a good, comfortable pair that fit. Not tight, but you know, comfortable on your hands. These aren't too tight. They're not too loose. It's just they feel good. You can buy any kind of brand, anything. I think these were like $8 at a Northern Tool. You can find them at places like Walmart, Harbor Freight. None of these places are affiliated with my channel. I'm just going to shoot you directions to be able to go and pick up things on a good budget. But you want a good pair of gloves. I see a lot of guys wear the welder gloves that come up high. It's whatever you want. I don't like insulated gloves. I used to wear a pair, and they faked me out, and I was holding too close to a spot that was really hot, and my hand heated up really quick, and I didn't realize how fast it was getting hot. I like thinner gloves because I can kind of tell what's happening a little better, but I generally only wear one because I can't grip the hammer as good with the other one on. Other thing, and I don't wear this all the time, but I do whenever I'm forge welding. It's just a good apron. I have had this one for a very long time. I even got paint on it. But I bought this at Harbor Freight for a few bucks. It has some pockets on it. I can throw stuff in. But when I forge weld, because of the splatter, it saves your clothes. It protects you. It keeps you from getting burned. I've accidentally had metal bounce back on me and things like that when I've hammered. I probably should wear it more than what I do, but I particularly just, it feels cumbersome for me to wear it, but to each their own. Like I said, I wear one whenever I'm forge welding, and a lot of times when I'm blacksmithing, I wear a hat. I used to torch a lot, and sparks hitting your head hurt really bad. Especially if I do forge weld, I'll wear a hat more, but that's just more of a personal preference. But that's just some basic safety items and some just, you know, safety stuff to have that when you're getting started, I do recommend having it because it is a few extra dollars will save you from getting burnt. So we'll move on to our next topic on this. All right, guys, the next thing we're going to talk about is the 4 major tools you need for blacksmithing. A lot of people know these, but some people don't. Ton of videos out there, ton of stuff on Pinterest, Instagram, everything about, you know, the tools you need. The 4 basic tools you need are a hammer, an anvil, which is just a hard surface to hammer on, a forge, and something to hold your material with. Especially like if you're doing hooks and things like that, and you're gonna have smaller, you know, smaller pieces that you can't just run the whole bar the whole time. You're gonna need something to hold your material with. So first and foremost, let's talk about hammers. I'm gonna bring the camera in closer onto the anvil and really let you kind of look, and I can show you different styles of hammers, at least what I have, and I'll talk about a few more too. All right guys, first and foremost, I'll talk about the hammer that I use all the time. This is a Swedish style hammer. Get down here and focus where you can see it. This is a Pettinghaus. It's 1,000 grams. I think that's around 2 pounds. I'd have to do my math. But it's a cross-peen style hammer with a square head. If you buy a hammer like this, you will have to dress up your head a little bit because it is sharp corners and the back. So you're not, when you do fuller something out or hammer, it's not making marks in your work too bad. Okay. It does have a shorter handle. As you can tell, it's very, very short. But it's my personal preference. A lot of people have longer. No one really that I know of personally that has a hammer as short as mine, but it's personal preference. I accidentally years ago cut it off a little too short, and I really liked it like that. And it's just whatever you personally like. Another hammer. Let me see. Sorry about that. Dropped some stuff in the floor. Just a small sledge. That isn't that one. It's this one right here. This is just a small cheap sledge. Probably bought at, it's made in India. It's a 2-pound sledge, just a mini sledge. They do really well. You can't fuller stuff out as easy with them, but you still can draw material and make it wider when you fuller it. But I brought the other one over because a friend of mine took one of these and made one of these, which is a straight peen. Now the handle's really short on this because I was teaching my daughter when she was about 6 how to blacksmith, and this was one of the hammers I let her use. It was a little big for her, but she had a fun time. But anyways, it was made out of one of these style ball peens. This one was probably a 2.5 pounder, I think. I'd have to try to find it on it. I don't use this one a ton. I'm gonna change that. One is because the handle's so short, it's actually a lot shorter than mine, but I'm going to change the handle out and start using it for some other things. It's handy when you're having to really kind of get in some certain spots that you can't with your other peen. But this is the straight peen style. This is just your mini sledge. Both work really well. I do recommend any hammer you get though, get a wooden handle for it. Make sure it has the wooden handle. I personally do not care for the plastic or fiberglass styles, because when you hit, to me, and I've mostly just seen it with the axes and the bigger sledges, but when you hit, they kind of flex a little bit. Some people like that, some people don't. I personally don't. I like a wooden handle. And, but just I don't know, personal preference, but I do recommend it. Plus, hot fire versus plastic handle sometimes does not match well. The other one is just let's see if I can find it. Here it is. So these are just standard cross peens. This one right here, I use a good bit for just delicate work and some just detail work. Has a sharper peen on it I use for some things. You'd want a head a little bit bigger. This is about a 1 pound. Thought it said it on it, but it don't. I use it for just some light work. The handle's kind of long, but I still choke up on it. But I've had some smaller people come up, some kids and stuff, when we've done some blacksmithing. I've let them use this because it's a little bit easier for them to swing. But just another, smaller cross peen. On a budget, because this hammer, if you buy it new, is like 40 or 50 bucks. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I looked. This was the first hammer I ever bought or got. This is from Harbor Freight. It's just a cross peen hammer. Just we'll say it's a 2 pounder. Kind of a sharp peen. I cleaned up a little bit. I used it all the time. I used it for years. I actually accidentally lost this one And that's how I ended up with my petting house. This I bought on clearance at Harbor Freight, I think for like $6 or $8. The only thing that I didn't care for, see if you can see it, is right here. I had some wedges put in here that I had to do on a fly. There was a fiberglass or plastic epoxy or something on the inside that just busted to pieces. And I ended up having to drive those in. So be careful when you buy a cheaper one to make sure it has wedges. If not, put you some wedges in it. But I used this for many, 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 many years. Great little hammer. And if I didn't end up losing it, I probably would still be using this hammer. It's very, very good. I will be doing, once I can get some drifts made, and we'll probably do a whole series on it on making a hammer. But you kind of need a hammer to make a hammer. So, but those are a few styles. One more style, and I'll talk about some others I don't have here, and I'll try to put some pictures up. This is just I couldn't find my bigger ball peen. It's here somewhere. But just a ball peen hammer. Just a rounded head, peen on the other side. And a lot of people use these. I use this mostly for dishing whenever I'm making spoons and stuff. But, you know, if you're just needing you need a hammer, you own a ball peen, use the ball peen. You don't have to have some special blacksmithing hammer to get started. You just need a hammer. I do recommend, and this is one of those, look at it before you use it, like a framing hammer, that, you know, your claw style hammers. A lot of them have grooves cut in them to grip the nail when they hit. Those will put a lot of mar and a lot of dings in mar up your work really bad and put a lot of dings in it. I don't recommend those. And the head doesn't have enough weight in it sometimes to do a good swing. All right, guys, another couple of hammers that I thought of off the top of my head, and I will try to post some pictures of them as I talk about them. The first is a French style hammer. It's more of a square head, and then it kind of drops down into your point. There's rounding hammers that are kind of like a big, not really like a ball peen, but it's like you got a flat surface on one side and it's rounded on the other. And then there's like a dog head hammer, which is a Japanese style hammer that basically your hammer handle is further to the back and you have more mass in the front. And I'll have some pictures pop up as I'm talking about these, so you can kind of see it. I don't own those. I had one dog head hammer once. I liked it for drawing out. I used it for about a week, and then I'm like, I really don't care for this. So I just moved on I went back to my original hammer and gave that actually back to a buddy of mine. So let's now talk about anvils. All right, guys, so I wanted to show what you can use as an anvil. And this is like the one piece of steel in my shop that I know I have used as an anvil when I had my other anvil in the back of my truck getting ready to go to a fair or a demo or something. Anyways, this is my upsetting block. I use it for upsetting metal. We'll go into more detail on that. But really all you need is a hard surface. You don't necessarily have to have an anvil like what this is sitting on. You just need a good hard surface to get started. I know people that have, depending on what state you live in, look at your local and state laws because it's different depending on where you're at. But a piece of railroad track, a piece of I-beam, just a good hard piece of steel. I have seen people be very creative in making anvils. I've used this one because it has sharp corners on spots. I've made hooks on it and a few other little things. But you don't necessarily have to have an anvil. I will recommend, if you're able to, pick it up off the ground a little bit, find a stump to put it on, something like that, because it's hard to be down here, like really, really down here low, trying to hammer and really do stuff. I did in the beginning, but also be careful on how you set it, because if it's really, really high, you're reaching up real high to hammer too. I've done both. I've had it a little too low. I've had it way too high when I first got started blacksmithing. Neither of which worked out well. As I learned, and I'll show here in a minute roughly how you want it, but get it close. It's hard to get it perfect when you're working with some primitive stuff, but use what you have and make it work, right? So, but I just want to show like a good chunky piece of steel, but you can use about anything. Check your local scrap yards. If you want to buy an anvil, I want to say Harbor Freight has some. They're cast anvils. They're cheap anvils. I've used the anvil. It's not bad. The rebound from it when you hit and your recovery isn't the greatest, but for getting started, it's a really good starter anvil. If you want to buy an anvil and have a horn, you will need to dress the horn up a little bit and clean it up because it's a weird shape. But all in all, you know, just a chunk of steel will do what you need it to do. You check local scrap yards. Also check local fabricating shops. This is an end piece that was cut off of something. I've had this thing for like 10 years, 12 years, probably longer than that. I started in really 2007, so, and I got it about 2008-ish, so you can do the math. But all in all, just good, basic, just chunk of steel will do everything you need it to do. So we will move on to holding tools. All right, guys, I'm gonna leave you pulled up here close to the anvil for a minute, and we're gonna talk about holding tools, tools to hold your material with. I'm gonna show you a couple pairs of tongs I use pretty regular. Just trying to run through real quick, sorry, I didn't have these set now. So these are just a pair of small pickup tongs. A good friend of mine made these. We'll make a bunch of tongs in this, in the basic blacksmithing series. I don't like making tongs. They're not that fun for me. I need to get into it more. But those are just pickup tongs. These are flat jawed or flat tongs. See if I can get it in here. Where you can grab flat metal. I know they have a more technical name, but I can't remember what it is offhand. I just use them for flat bar. These are tapered tongs. You use them for round bar. I use them for some square stock too. And these are just 1/4 inch little round stock tongs. But you don't have to have these. When I first got started, I used these, just a pair of vice grips. I used a pair of pliers too, from time to time, anything just to hold your material, especially if you're making hooks, because you can grab the back of it, you can grab the sides of it and really hammer, and you don't have to worry about it slipping when you're hammering. So I got a piece of stock right here. I will say though, be careful with them if you are just grabbing with a piece of round bar, because it could roll. But, you know, just put it in there, tighten them down a little bit. These are just a pair of Craftsman. I don't know where I got them at, but cool thing, I mean, you can lock it in. It isn't moving, you know, a lot. I will say be careful when you're tightening down, especially if you're grabbing like the edge of a hook or something. Let me get in here close. See those teeth? Those can make a lot of marks inside your work, but you can even get a, and they can mess it up pretty good. But you can do just a little cheap pair. These are like from Harbor Freight or Walmart or something. I need the pair, small pair. They're a no-name brand, so I don't know where I got them. These, like I said, I could have got at a yard sale, flea market. You can check Facebook Marketplace and find tools all the time cheap. But just for something cheap to hold down with, those work great. We'll also do some modifications for some tools. I'll show you these. Need to finish cleaning these up. These are a pair of scrolling tongs I made out of a pair of electrical side cutters, a big pair that were just jammed. But that's one big thing that we will do inside this, on this channel, excuse me, is repurposing things. So we'll do a lot of repurpose, a lot of, you know, making tools out of other tools to make things work for us. Again, blacksmithing is an easy budget hobby to have. All right, let's move on. Let me see. We talked about hammers, we talked about anvils, talked about holding tools. We need to talk about forges. I want to back the camera up and go into a little bit of detail about this. Okay. Okay, guys. So let's talk about forges for a second, or what you're going to use to heat up your metal in. You can use a campfire with a piece of pipe and a hairdryer hook to it. Just make sure you use like good wood to burn, and you can actually start forging with that. You can use charcoal, you can use coal. I have both. I don't have any coal up here with me. It's in my other, I actually got some more and it's in underneath my carport. I just haven't brought it up yet. But if you're going to use charcoal, I recommend, and I'll get close so you can see, buy natural lump charcoal. You can buy it at Walmart. I think Royal Oak is one of the brands. I use it to grill with, but it actually gets hot enough that you can forge with it. Do not buy the stuff that you light and it automatic, the instant light charcoal and stuff that burns really fast, it does not last long. It just, the way they're made, they're not made for the kind of heat and temperature you're going to use. I've seen people use them, they just can't get up to temperature. But if you're using something like natural lump, this right here, yeah, there we go. I mean, you can see the grain lines in it. This was a piece of wood that they charred. I have seen wood burning forges. I haven't made one yet, but they're kind of neat. I've seen a guy, I've seen them tested online. I just haven't really used one yet. But I want to build one for my cabin and my property in the mountains, just because I'll have trees readily available. In my forge, because we do a lot of production and we do a lot of, classes and stuff, we use gas forges. I'm going to bring you in close. I'll show you my gas forge. It's a Majestic forge. They're not affiliated with this channel at all, but I'm going to give prompts where prompts are due. They make a good gas forge. Be careful when you're looking, because I've seen a lot of budget ones out there, and they just take the cable, and put it on the inside and piece of fire brick, and you got to be real careful with that, because that can burn off and get in your lungs. It's just not a good thing. Use your own discretion on what you use and what you buy, but I'm going to bring in and show you these. They're pretty decent, and I'll show you my coal forge too. But again, you could just use a fire at your fire pit or anything. So let's come in here a little closer. So this is a 2-burner forge that we have. I can forge weld in it. Everything I do, like I said, I like it because it runs really well. Like I said, they just work really well. And then we have make a turn. And we have a 3-burner over here that we use that opens up on the side when we're doing dinner bells and some bigger stuff. We swap them out from time to time, but mainly we use the 2-burner because it uses less propane. Let's go over and I'll show you the coal forge that we have up here too. All right, guys, so this is one of the coal forges we have. It has a fire pot on top, has the metal pipe that comes down, has an ash dump and everything. This is a friend of mine's. We use it. I think we've used it like once or twice. We really don't use it a lot because we use the coal, or we use the gas up here all the time. And we got a hand crank blower on it that we had to modify a no trespassing sign to make it work. As I've said before, use what you have, make it work for you. All right, guys, I'm going to give you a basic rundown on a forge. So, and don't laugh at my drawings. Sorry, got to turn this around so I can make sure I'm getting this videoed. So, on your forge, if you're going to build one, you're going to have an area here with your fire pot, okay? Okay? Then you're going to have a pipe that comes down. You can use a T-pipe for this. And this is where your air is going to go in. You can use a screw-on tab at the bottom, or a screw-on plug. I used to use one, and it would, because of the ash and the rust, and because it creates an acid with wood and things like that, it'll create lye. It'll rust out real bad. And it ended up rusting shut, and I had to use pliers a lot of times to get it to open, or a pipe wrench. If you're going to use a screw-on one, I recommend that you take, when you're done, your forge is cooled down, take that off so water can flow through and it won't set up in it. So far as your airflow system, I've used a rubber pipe up to here. A hose for a dryer works really well. If you can find like the metal ones, I will say be careful, because on my blower because my forges I'm doing a repair on, and my coal forge that I use whenever I travel, I'm repairing it and kind of updating it. But the blower I have that's on it, I've had since the beginning. I found it at a scrapyard. It leaks oil. Well, it leaked enough oil, and somehow I did something to make it suck fire down inside of it, and it blew up because it had oil in there. It was weird. I've never seen it do it, never seen it do it again. But a dryer hose does do really well. If you can find you a metal one, those do better. But a hair dryer or anything to get your source, oh, I can't draw. So that's, there we go, hair dryer. Because you have the low and the medium on it, you can kind of adjust your airflow pretty good. Hand crank blowers you can find from different places. Yeah, y'all can see that. A good friend of mine years ago hooked a leaf blower up to his, and it wasn't blowing enough air, so he revved it up and blew everything everywhere. He was about like 12 whenever he was getting started, so be careful. Watch your airflow. But you can do the same thing. Instead of having a forge, same hair dryer, run a piece of pipe into a fire pit. You know, maybe fire. Isn't that pretty? Fire pit. Have you some good hickory or some wood in here, charcoal or whatever, and you can forge with that. Okay? You don't have to have the whole big setup. Okay, guys, let's talk about a few things that a lot of people don't talk about that you will need in getting your blacksmithing started. You don't necessarily have to have them. It just makes life a lot easier when you do have them. So first and foremost, a good set of punches, chisels, files, but a good set of punches and chisels. This is a cheap set bought at Northern Tool for like under 15 bucks, maybe around 20 bucks. I'll say around 20 bucks, but because they go on sale a bunch. But you get a good little drift. Here, I'll get closer. See. You got a good little drift. Different size, just round punches. A few different kinds of chisels. There we go. You get some really, really good. And then, I mean, this is a cheap set, but these are pretty good center punches. You will use that a ton, making hooks. Two different styles of those. But just a little bit of everything. Very, very cheap. I mean, I think it's like, what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. You get 12 different styles for, like I said, like, you know, under $20. You also want to get a good set of files. And this is just one of the ones I have up here. I bought a set. I want to say they were around 20 bucks too, because I bought a whole new set. It comes with mini files, the brushes, everything for them. But also, get with a farrier somewheres, get you a rasp. See if I can, okay? It has 2 sides to it, but it's a horseshoe rasp. It's what farriers use. For hot filing, these do amazing. I can take down metal almost as fast as I can with a grinder with that. The next tool I want to talk about, and is overlooked a bunch, get you a metal yardstick or a tape measure or a ruler. Try to get a metal one. The wooden ones burn, but this one is just a little aluminum one. And even if my metal's a little warm, I can stick it on there, measure where I need to measure it, and it, you know, has worked well for me for a few years. We have a couple different ones up here, but yardsticks are so handy because you can just pop it on your anvil, make a mark, and then run with what you have to. But just a good yardstick measure of some kind, tape measure, whatever. A lot of people don't talk about getting these, but when you're doing a lot of, sorry, I heard my chicken, and she's griping about something. I want to make sure nothing was getting them. But anyways, back on topic. But if you're making a bunch of hooks the same length, if you're making a fireplace set, doing hot dog forks, anything like that, and you're making multiples of the same thing, having a way to measure it to know that you've got everything the same length is very handy. So just a good little measure. This one's not that expensive. I want to say I picked it up at, I got today's hardware, because it says it right there on the back. But I don't remember how much it was. They weren't very expensive. But I do recommend getting a metal one. Again, plastic melts and wood burns. Alrighty. Also, a twisting wrench of some kind. This is just a small adjustable wrench I've had for a long time. And I've used it many times to twist some small stuff. I'll get in here close. This is just the Crescent brand, but just an adjustable wrench. I have seen where someone will get 2 cheap ones, cut it off like right here at an angle, weld the other, on one of them, weld it to the other one, a handle here, and then use this one like clamps in the vise like this, and you have a different amount. You have 2 different style of twisting wrenches, which is kind of neat. And I might end up doing that, finding a cheap set and setting that up. We'll do a video on it. But it's just a cool, handy tool. It adjusts fast. I also have a bigger one that we use on a lot of stuff right here. We use this for railroad spike knives and things like that. Has a handle welded onto it, but it's just an old pipe wrench, or monkey wrench, I guess is what it was. But very handy. We use it all the time. All right, guys, the next thing I want to talk about is a hacksaw. This was a cheap one. Blades are cheap. Before we got our electric bandsaw up here last year, so we use this to cut 1,000 pieces of steel. If you're doing cuts for a hot dog fork or a split for something, if you're doing a double hook, or there's just so many uses for a hacksaw. I mean, it's cutting, but it's just so many things you can cut. It makes life a lot easier, and it's cleaner instead of having to chisel out different things. But you can pick one of these up just for next to nothing, under $10 at Walmart, Northern Tool, Harbor Freight, places like that. You know, very, very cheap, but very, very handy. Also, and I didn't bring one with me, but it's just something I just forgot in my other shop. If you can get a small drill, not an impact driver, a drill, especially if you're whenever you get into doing like production hooks, you can punch a hole every time, or you can drill a hole. And a lot of times if I'm making a bunch of hooks or making a bunch of something, a treble hook, you know, or something that moves up and down or whatever, I'll drill the holes first, get them close, and then I'll drift it out to the size that I need it. But I get everything more uniform that way because I can center punch all my holes and make sure everything's lined up and do all that. Especially in production stuff, you can just pop them out left and right. Black & Decker makes a pretty decent little drill. That's what I use. I have 2 of them, and I use them on a regular basis all the time. Probably a lot more than what I should be using that drill for, but they've held up. So just a cheap cordless drill, or even not a cordless drill, you can find them all over the place. You can find them on sale at Harbor Freight all the time. I'm naming off a bunch of places, and I'll say again, none of these places are affiliated with my shop or with this channel. I'm going to point you in the direction to where you can get it on a budget. The last thing I think, I'd have to go back and look at my notes, is I want to talk about vices for a minute. And one other thing, so there's 2 things. I just seen something I forgot. So, let me see. Well, sun decided to shine in here. All right, so this right here is my leg vise. I actually traded for it. You don't necessarily have to have this style vise. I ended up finding another one in scrapyard I'm modifying for my truck. But any vise will work. A small one, a big one, anything that you can clamp metal in, you can find them all over the place. Again, check local scrap yards. I've got one that I use in my other shop from a local scrap yard. You can pick them up. If you want a new one, you can pick them up at Harbor Freight, Northern Tool, Lowe's, Home Depot, any of those places will have them. And you can, but it's just so handy for when you're doing twists, having to cut something, you can clamp it in there, it holds it. Doing some chisel work, things like that. I mean, it just has so many things that you can use just with this one tool. If you're gonna get a smaller vise, mount it down to a good base. You can do some twists with it, but like for hooks or anything like 1/4 inch, 3/8, but when you're getting into 1/2 inch to like railroad spikes or, you know, bigger metal, you're gonna want to get a bigger vise. But, you know, for in the beginning, just something small, you can do a ton with just that little vise. And the last thing, and I just remembered, and I'll move over here and show it. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about, let me move this, and it's probably one of the most overlooked items out there, is a brush. I use just a simple, cheap welding brush. This one come with my cheap welder a long time ago. But just something you can clean your metal off, get forged scale off with it. They make them with thicker bristles. I've never owned one, but I have used them. Let's see. Ow. Left that hanging there. There you go. Just a good cheap brush. you will use it 1,000 times a day, and you can get them for just like $1 or $2. Heck, I think you can even pick these up at the dollar store or a dollar store, Walmart, Harbor Freight. I'm gonna say these places a bunch. You know, but just to clean your material off, to brush it. I don't really care for these styles. I just have it up here. I burnt myself with this one just the other day making a fireplace poker for a friend of mine. I went to brush and it dropped and my knuckle hit because the hand's so close. I kind of like the ones, I know this is weird, because you've seen my hammer, the ones with a longer handle, because I can brush and keep my hands away from it because I'm pushing towards it or whatever. And again, you can also find them on just different websites, thicker bristles. Amazon has a bunch of these, very cheap, but it's a good all-around tool. Okay guys, so that is the tools and basic tools you'll need to get started blacksmithing. We will go into more detail about different punches, chisels, eye punches, different, you know, just different tools as we progress along in the basic blacksmithing, intermediate blacksmithing, and more experienced blacksmithing videos that I'll be having come out. The first video that blacksmithing that I'll be doing is going to be a hook video. It's very simple, but you learn so much stuff from just this one basic technique in using a hook, or in making a hook, I'm sorry. So you'll learn, and you'll see, let me pull up my little teaching tool here, if it don't glare too bad. So you'll learn how to draw the metal out, make a finial, or draw and round the metal out, make a finial, make your hook, and then make your hanger and put a twist in it. But it's really, really basic, but you learn a ton just from this basic tool, or this basic project. So on the next video, we'll be doing that. And then after that, we'll be doing a hook. I'm sorry, we'll be doing the hook, and then after that, we'll be doing a leaf. And we'll show, the leaf shows some completely different things, but with those two projects, you learn a ton of different hammer techniques. If you know how to make a leaf, when you learn how to make a leaf, you can learn how to make a double-edged weapon, or a double-edged knife, or a spear, or various things. You learn how to make a hook, you can learn how to make a hot dog fork, you can learn how to make tent stakes, you can learn how to make frog gigs. I mean, there's just so many things just with those two items that you can make so many things with. But if you learn those basics and a few others, you'll be doing amazing projects very easily. If you skip the basics, then you're going to be struggling. I had a kid once that was like, that's all he wanted to do was make knives, but he didn't know how to make a point on the end of a piece of flat bar. But when you learn how to make a hook, you learn how to make a point. When you learn how to make a leaf, you learn how to make a blunt point. I mean, it's just so many different techniques from just those two projects that you will be able to grow from in your blacksmithing. So tune in. We're going to try to have a video every week. Hit the like and subscribe button, and God bless. Ow!